In a fairly ballsy move, X-Men Apocalypse lists off deities who are apparently inspired by its villain. In a world where there's outrage over a Captain America plot twist or the all-female Ghostbusters reboot, I'm surprised that suggesting your antagonist was the inspiration for Yahweh, which is the Hebrew name for God, didn't result in uproar. Apocalypse also lets us in on a secret. It's a commonly held belief within the franchise that mutants are a recent development, sped up by the coming of nuclear power. Colossus owes his steel skin to the Chernobyl disaster, for instance. Yet this film reveals that they've existed for far longer than we or the X-Men thought. Apocalypse claims to have been there for the dawn of civilization, which places his origin in or prior to the Sumerian era. For context, Sumer was a kingdom within Iraq that the Ancient History Encyclopedia says is generally considered the cradle of society, and it existed from around 4500 BC, if not earlier. Despite being known as the first mutant, he's not alone either. As seen during the film's prologue, Apocalypse has been accompanied by his 4 horsemen since the time of the pyramids. If mutants existed back then, they're bound to have cropped up throughout history in the years since. Should you look hard enough, and bearing in mind that this is a fantasy universe, you can find possible evidence of these individuals. Namely, religious figures from every age display what can only be described as superpowers. Can you see where I'm going with this? Should they have existed, it seems possible they were mutants in the X-Men's world. That would certainly explain how Moses can part the ocean and why Jesus is able to heal the sick. This helps provide context for the fanaticism displayed by Magneto and his Brotherhood, not to mention Sebastian Shaw's Hellfire Club in First Class. Perhaps they believe they're somehow favoured by God. If Christ was potentially one of them, how can their powers not be a sign of divine intervention? Very suddenly, it's understandable that they call themselves Homo Superior, besides the ability to spew fire anyway. X-Men Apocalypse is significant in another way, but there are mild spoilers here, so be warned. At the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to the character via the latest in a long line of rituals. During the ceremony, Apocalypse's consciousness travels from an aging body into another mutant. In doing so, he absorbs their abilities. However, the transference, as it's called, doesn't seem to be made possible purely thanks to his or his horseman's powers. Consider this: it can be carried out by normal, garden variety humans. That's demonstrated by the chanting cultists who awaken him in the 1980s. So how does the procedure actually work? Taken at face value, magic is a likely candidate. The one who began this process was, for want of a better word, a witch. Secondly, the words spoken by everyone involved are a bit like occult rites. That said, I prefer the idea of unknown technology. Bearing in mind the pyramid beneath which it takes place, gravity-defying gold, glowing hieroglyphs and Apocalypse's sci-fi armour, it seems rather alien, and maybe that's precisely what it is. Before you laugh this theory off, it's worth pointing out that it's very much in line with the source material. The comic book Apocalypse encountered extraterrestrial ships many times in his youth, discovering them hiding in plain sight or crashed. I mean, there's a whole plotline about a time-travelling baddie pretending to be a pharaoh, but we won't get into that. One even gives him his trademark outfit made from its machinery. If that's the case in this movie, it would clarify the origin and never explained importance of his suit. As an example, the witch spends her last moments swapping that armour onto Apocalypse's new body despite falling to her death. It would shed light on other oddities too. If Apocalypse came from a time of parchment and candles, how was he able to take knowledge from a TV? One explanation is that this isn't the first piece of technology he's encountered. If that's the case, what were aliens doing on Earth in the first place? Once again, an answer lies within the comics. In the books, they created mutants. An elder race called the Celestials fiddle about with humanity at the dawn of their existence, leading to the mutant genome. Although it's not necessary in the slightest, this gives a reason for the X-Men bending laws of reality by shooting laser beams from their eyes. The films have always toyed with science via evolution and DNA, but that doesn't really cover how some are able to teleport or become sexy blue shapeshifters. This might. Of course, the question then becomes why. Perhaps later movies will take inspiration from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where the Inhumans, who bear more than a passing resemblance to mutants, were created by the Kree to serve as soldiers in a coming war. It's an idea that opens the door to the X-Men's more outrageous space adventures, which are rumoured to be the film's next port of call. Whether that's a good idea is another matter. Judging by fans' anger at the smallest of changes to a franchise, such a monumental shift in the status quo may not go down too well.